My baby dolls, we are back again, another episode of Genesis. As always, I am your host, Ian Kahanowitz. Today, we got another person coming back to the show, love recurring guest. We got former Major League Baseball player Bret Boone. He's on dock today, and it's going to be a great show. Going to talk to him about his son at Princeton. We're going to talk about wild card baseball. We're going to talk a little bit about his career, and we're going to talk to him about Canadian baseball. I think he was in Calgary one season. We're going to talk about coaching. We're going to talk about, being a baseball player and being in the limelight, the press, and, all these kids that are doing well, and like Judge on the Yankees, how they handle fame and all this. And we'll get into a great discussion. I also got a union question for him and how he would address it. Most of you know that I am plugging for these guys who were left out of the pension plan in 1980. A book was written. Doug Gladstone's been on my show. He wrote the book, A Bit of Cup of Coffee. And we've also had two law professors last week. Baseball Meets the Law. We're all going to reconvene November 7th on my show, along with former Major League Baseball player Jimmy Driscoll, who was a utility player at Oakland for the Swinging A's, and also Texas under Ted Williams in 1972, and he's one of the guys that were left out of the pension plan. And, of course, Bob Boone, Bret's father, was instrumental on player union and representative, and I know Bret has been also. And we'll ask Bret what he thinks about collective bargaining and what he would do in certain situations. It's going to be a great show. Sit back, enjoy. You are listening to the Comfortably Zone Radio Network. But the Zigzag Man, our famous producer, Ralph Tycho, has some great shows on. He got Giants baseball on. We got Oakland A's baseball with Nancy Philly. We got Mark and Mark in the midday with Mark Weiss and Mark Littell. We got Golenbach University with famous author Peter Golenbach. We got Vintage Sports with AP writer Hal Bach. He's been doing it for almost 60 years. And we are very fortunate to have all these great people. And again, like anything, our shows are to teach you folks. Like for me, I teach about old-time baseball. I teach about folks who have played the game, and we get great guests like Bret on today. Those who have played the game at a certain time. And, of course, baseball is like the law. It just keeps evolving and evolving and evolving. And what we learned about from Bret last time, we know that Ray Boone, his grandfather, was a true purist, grew up, in a time and played in a time where you just had to win your division and you get into the World Series. And then his father, Bob, instrumental for the Philadelphia Phillies as the catcher, played in a time where you just had like a championship series, and then you get to the World Series, and of course they changed the mound, they changed the strike zone, they changed the rules, and of course Bret played in a time where it was a watershed. You had the 94 strike, and then you've had the first ALDS playoffs and NLDS playoffs in 1995, and now you got the wild card game, which is on tonight, and we'll talk about that. We'll get Bret's insight into it, and it's just I'm excited about the show. And if you don't know who Bret Robert Boone is, he was a Major League Baseball player, played second base for about 14 years during his career. He was a 3-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner, and 2-time Silver Slugger Award winner. He's a member of the Boone family, one of the most recognizable families in baseball. And when he started playing in 1992, the Boones became the first generation to have 3 generations of players. And without any further ado, welcome to the show, Bret. How are you today?
Good, Ian. How you doing?
Having you on the show, I'm doing fantastic. It's going to be a great one.
Can you hear me all right?
What was that?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm hearing you fine. What are you, on a cell phone?
I'm on a cell phone.
Yeah, usually works better with landlines. I'm still back in the dark ages, but that's fine. I gave up doing this show on cell phone because I had so much, they would just break on me and all. So I use my landline. Let's talk about the 4th generation of Boones here. We're talking about Jacob, who's gone to Princeton. What's going on with him?
Well, I just got back from a trip seeing him. Well, he'd be mad if I told you, but I went down. They had a scrimmage 3 6 innings events that basically his first real college at bat. And I got to the stadium. It was freezing cold, and he hit a ball up the middle, ground ball up the middle, obvious base hit. He fell straight on his face coming out of the box, and they threw him out from shallow center field. So that's how his college career started.
Hey, what is it, the Princeton Tigers they're called?
Princeton Tigers, yeah.
And now let me ask you, he was drafted by the Washington Nationals. Didn't you finish up your career with the Nationals?
I did in 2007.
Yeah, and now let me ask you, from the college level, does he have to be redrafted, or is he still property of the Washington Nationals?
I think when you come out of high school, I think you're property for 1 year. But if you go to a Division I school, you can't sign till after your junior year, or if you're 21, you can sign after your sophomore year.
Now let me ask you this: what is he going to Princeton to study?
He doesn't know yet. He's taking econ, and those guys that are really smart, we don't ask them about what they're taking. They kind of figure it out. But I don't think you have to declare till your sophomore year. So he's just kind of feeling it out right now. And, he told me he'd decide next year. Me and him are oil and water.
Yeah. Well, you have 4 kids. You have him. You have another girl. I forgot her name. And you have Judah. And is it Isaiah?
Savannah's a senior at USC. Jakey is a freshman at Princeton, and then I've got twin boys that are 13.
Yeah, just like me. But you still have a full head of hair. I don't. My hair went out the window after I had twins.
Yes, I do. I do have a full head.
Yeah, you have good.
I'll tell you what, it's getting a little bit gray now.
Well, look, you're 48 years old, man. I got gray at 36. I got the gray at 37 when I had the twins. I don't know. And then, wait a minute.
That'll do it to you.
Oh, yeah. Weren't you playing ball at the time? Let's see. It's 2017. You go back there, 2004. You were still playing.
Yeah. I remember having twins.
How the hell did you? Well, for all the home games and stuff, did you have to stay up all night with Susie and do the diapering and the changing and all that?
I did. I was the full Monty. I did everything. So, I actually enjoyed that part. And now they're 13 and terrorizing me. Now I'm coaching their 14U team. They're playing on the 14s, and they're young 13-year-olds. So that's a challenge in itself. But I'm enjoying it. I did it for 3 years with Jacob till he got to high school, and then I just said, "You're on your own, kid." And now I feel like I kind of owe it to the twins, so I've committed 8 months to coach the twins.
Well, let me ask you this. Growing up in baseball, of course, you're third generation. Now your grandfather. Was your great-grandfather into ball, which really helped institute playing ball for Ray? Because I know Ray went into, I think, the Navy, and he served during World War II. How did baseball get started with Ray?
No, I think it was with Gramps. I think Gramps' dad. No, he wasn't an athlete. Didn't play. So Gramps was kind of, obviously he's the patriarch of our family, and he started it all. Started with Gramps, and he was, as it's kind of been documented that me and Gramps were real close, and miss him a lot, but I love rehashing the stories that he used to tell, where Aaron and myself and my dad would be at the table, and he'd be talking about Ted Williams for the 20th time, and we'd be like, Gramps, all right, Uncle on the stories. But now looking back on that, and as you get older in life and you look back at things, they're pretty special times. So, miss him, but definitely the patriarch of the family.
Well, it's interesting. It's coming up, I think. I think your grandfather passed on October 17, 2004, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. And the thing about that is the twins were born. Now, one thing Grandpa was he was a proud man. Trust me. as far as defending his time in the game, but also his family. I mean, he would never let you know to your face how much you meant to him. But when those twins were born, it's like, oh, possible fourth generation. And I know he was excited, and he passed away, and he never got to meet the twins, which was tough for me, but because I knew how important that would be to him. But, his time was his time.
And let me ask you this. He instituted baseball on your father, but your father was a catcher. He was an infielder like you were, and I think Aaron was a third baseman. I mean, how did you?
Well, I'll tell you this: Gramps was a catcher, turned shortstop, third baseman, and Dad was a third baseman turned catcher. I think my dad didn't even catch his first game until Double or Triple A. He was always a third baseman.
Wow. Now let me ask.
It's kind of weird. I don't know. The only guy I've known that's done that was Biggio in the modern times. He went from a catcher to a second baseman. But it's kind of weird that Gramps was a catcher turned infielder and Dad was an infielder turned catcher.
Yeah, because I forget who else was a catcher that was a famous, and then they put him in center field. But it would make sense. But it would make sense to be first base, or it would make sense to be an outfield, like Yogi Berra played left field in his later years. Elston Howard for the Yankees did that. But now let me ask you about your father. Now, when he got into the league, and again, we spoke a little about this before, in 1972, you had Marvin Miller running around, and of course, that year was the first players' strike. Does your father ever mention Marvin Miller and all the player union stuff he did?
Oh, he definitely does, and he was the one that really encouraged me because Dad was very proactive in the union. And, I think he was the National League rep for several years. And so he was right there on the, front lines. But he is the one that encouraged me in 94, when we had our strike. And he encouraged me to just get involved. He said, for any other reason, just educate yourself. So when you walk out of those meetings, you're educated on what's actually going on. A lot of the players don't get involved, and they're on the outside, and they have their opinion. I remember coming back from those meetings saying, listen, unless you're at those meetings with us and you're involved, your opinion means nothing to me. So it was really educational, and I'm glad I did it. And I saw some things behind the scenes that blew me away. But, I was definitely could talk about what was going on and explain to other people and try to educate other players on what was actually going on. And I think that was a great, my dad's given me a lot of really good advice in my life, and that was one of the most important. And it's, because he knew, me and my dad we're different people, but, just him encouraging me to get involved and just, know what you're talking about if you're going to speak. So that's why I got involved, and I'm glad I did.
Now, let me ask you this question. When you sat at because like I mentioned before the show, I have this little issue, and I'm not sure if you're aware of it. There have been over 900 players between 1947 and 1980 who were denied a pension plan because of an oversight by Marvin Miller when he was collective bargaining in 1980. And the author, Doug Gladstone, wrote a book, A Bitter Cup of Coffee, if you want. It's $3 off of Amazon. I suggest everyone to read it. They were left out, and he regrets Miller. A few years before he died, he sat down with Doug, and he's like, we left them out. It was an oversight. But these guys in 2012 were granted a small pension of like $150 a month, something piddly. Some of these guys had gone bankrupt. Some of these guys fixed the water heater. These guys were like left out by the whole union. My question to you is, can we go back and amend a certain agreement if we do it through collective bargaining?
I think we can, and I think, the modern day player is definitely different than even my era. And my era was, the early 2000s. But what I've seen just in my brief, I was with the Oakland A's for 2 years, and just in my brief experience, I would, once in a while, I'd go to the big league side and I'd talk to the guys. What I do see from this current modern-day player is they're actually pretty generous with taking care of the past generations. And I think it has a lot to do with the amount of money that's in the game right now and how fortunate everybody is to be making the money they're making. But I think they're pretty generous, and I think they're making every gesture they can about taking care of the guys in the past that didn't have the fortune of making what the current guys are, if that makes sense.
And, Tony Clark, he's the president of the Players Union. And
yeah.
I know you played with Tony, played against him. He was on Detroit from
Played against him. Yeah.
And the thing is, he's not bringing it forward. And so as a lawyer, if the Players Union doesn't bring it forward, I have figured out that the pension plan comes under what's called ERISA, which is the government.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, didn't recently there was amendments made to the pension plan for generations ago?
There was. That was in 2012. There was some edits in it, but they only allowed a certain amount of money by some crazy kind of configuration done by an actuary, where back then, after 1980, if you sat one day on the bench, you're guaranteed medical benefits for the rest of your life. If you are playing 43 games or more, you're guaranteed a pension for your life. These guys didn't have that. They were left out. And so what they did was, what happened, Bud Selig instituted it. He bargained with the Players Union, and they were able to get a small stipend for these guys. But, Jimmy Driscoll, who I met last week, who played for the Swinging A's, he gets $163 a month from Major League Baseball after a 14-year career. No medical benefits. Yeah. And they cannot, all of you guys can pass this down, I think, to your spouses and your kids and all this stuff. They can't. And so the rules, I wouldn't go to say is unconstitutional, but it's unfair. At least.
Well, I think when you start to discuss that, though, do the owners have any liability in all of this? They're the ones that pay. Does that make sense? So they've got a little bit of, onus.
Right. Yeah, and
all the players can do, all we can do as players is fight for it. But the owners have to be on board, and it's kind of their responsibility because they fund everything. So I think as far as the game has it's come a long way. And right now, if I look at these current players and I'm thinking, wow, they're making a ton of money, which means the owners are making a ton of money. Because these owners, good, bad, or indifferent, they're not unintelligent people. They're very smart people. So if they're paying these salaries, there's a reason they're paying them. Because they're making a ton of money. And I think the game is thriving. And I think a lot of things, you mentioned Bud Selig. I was a big critic of his, in 94. And, over 20 some odd years, I look at what he's done, and I have to give him credit that Bud actually did some really good things for this game, and in a positive way. And really has expanded the game. We've had labor peace since 94, and I think that's why the salaries are what they are, and I think that's why the game is thriving at a really high level. I think it's worldwide. I mean, they're expanding and they're doing that. The games are still what is that called?
No, I don't know. That's a good question.
World Baseball Classic. That's what I was. And I just think everything is just really positive now for the game. I mean, I try to watch as much as I can, but raising kids, it's like, no, I'm more interested in their games than Major League Baseball. But it's last year's postseason, I watched from start to finish, and wow, it was exciting. And there's a lot of young, vibrant, athletic, kids are getting into the big leagues earlier nowadays. I mean, it's kind of normal to be 23 in the big leagues. When I broke in, if you got to the big leagues when you were 23, you were on the, fast track. So I see a lot of really positive things going on in the game right now. And I think the labor piece has been a big part of that.
And, you even mentioned, and I spoke to you before the show, no matter what you think, and I'll quote you, I don't want to hear overplayed athletes. That's all, out of the window. Athletes are paid what the market says. Don't be ignorant.
Exactly. And they always will be. I mean, and I try to make the reference to an actor or a singer. It's like, you know what, I'm getting paid X amount for this concert, or, I think I used the reference of Brad Pitt getting $20 or $25 million for a film. Well, if Brad Pitt makes a film for $20-25 million, and the film makes $200 million, guess what? He's worth every penny. If Ian or Bret makes a movie and they pay us $1 million and it makes $10 million, we're not worth it. And I think players are in the same category. It's when people stop paying the prices and stop going to games, the players' salaries will reflect that. And I think that goes back to what I told you about the owners, is think whatever you want about the owners of professional franchises. The bottom line is they're smart, successful businessmen. And the reason they're paying these high prices is because they can. And because that's how sports is really thriving, and especially America right now.
You know what's interesting? They get most of their money, I don't think, from gate receipts. I think it's from all the endorsements and the.
You know what? I was thinking about this the other day. A buddy of mine is in radio in the San Diego area, and he's talking about the Chargers relocating to LA. And right now they're playing in a venue where it only seats 24,000. Okay, now if your main revenue was coming from ticket receipts, especially in the NFL, there's no way you would agree to play in a venue that seats 24,000 people. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I mean it wouldn't make sense.
So that's telling me the money's not. The owners don't really care how many people come through the gates. They're getting their money from several different sources.
And that's what happened with the pension fund originally in 1969. They're getting revenues from commercials and now TV and radio, that Marvin Miller was able to bargain with them and say, look, you're going to inflate the pension fund because you're using these guys' names. And so that's what happened. The pension, took some sort of the revenue that the owners were making off of the sponsors and all the TV endorsements and all the TV contracts they were getting. Now, you go today, everything's on cable. I don't know. Do you get blacked out of all the San Diego Padres games?
I actually do. But then there's a local channel that you can watch it on. So.
Yeah, I hear that goes on in California, Los Angeles. You can't get the Dodgers either, for that matter. But
no. I'll give you an example on the Major League Baseball package. It's like if I want to watch the Padre game, it'll say every time blacked out. But then I go to the local channel and watch it. Not that I really would.
That's just awful. You know what I got? Because I got T-Mobile. I got the Major League Baseball TV.com, and I get every game. I get every game with my package, so I was able to watch whatever game I wanted to this year. Now, let me ask you, do you still follow the Mariners?
I do. It's tough. It's tough sometimes, but yes, I do. I mean, that's kind of, where I had my best years and great teammates up there. So, yeah, I consider myself kind of a Mariner. So I'm always kind of pulling for them, but it's been tough. It's been, what's it been now?
Well, look at Houston. Look at Houston and the team they got. Los Angeles, the Angels got a good team. I mean, the Mariners have a good team. They just got to get, I think, a few more closers and a few more starting pitchers.
The Mariners have a tremendous offense, and the thing that saddens me, it's such a great city, and great venue. But I went up there a couple of years ago, and I went to a football game. I went to the Seahawks game. And I walked into that stadium, and it was like, it gave me tingles. It reminded me of 2001, 2002, 2003, where I'd come out of the dugout, and it'd be Monday night. And at the time, the Royals were in the basement. And we'd have 48,000 just rocking. And, I go back now, I try to make it up to Seattle at least once a year. But I go back now, and it's just kind of, half the capacity and just kind of a ho-hum, or what are we going to do this year? But when I went to the Seahawks game, it reminded me of what that city is capable of. If you win Seattle, that city is a gold mine. I mean, they'll really, truly support you. And it just kind of makes me sad that we just can't get to the postseason. So, yeah. Half-heartedly, I'm pulling for them. I don't live and die with them. They're definitely, it was definitely my best times and my best years, and I'm kind of partial to the city of Seattle.
Because they got the loudest. I remember when they had this the Kingdom out there, and you go there.
Well, the Kingdom, I got called up to the big leagues in 1992. And it was the Kingdom then, and I later got traded to the Reds and moved on from there, and then came back for kind of my second tour with Seattle in 2001. But, that place, in 1995, I remember, because I had a bunch of buddies on the team. And in 95, when they win the postseason, I remember watching those games, and that place was just rocking. And I'll tell you this, that city is really supportive, and if you just win, they'll be there. And if you were to win one time, they'll be there that'll buy you 10 years. So when they don't make it every year, I kind of get sad, like, come on, guys, just make it.
Yeah, I mean, look, they got Nelson Cruz. They got former Yankee.
By the way, one of my favorite players ever, Nelson Cruz.
Really? I didn't know that. Let's talk about him a little bit.
Love him. Love his swing path. Love how he cuts it off. It's like when I watch him, it's like Tiger when he used to hit that knockdown wedge when he just cut it off at the end. And that's Nelson's swing. I've always been a fan of Nelson. Well, but Cano is a great player. I mean, if he has another year or two, just decent years, he's a first ballot Hall of Fame guy for me. Seager's a really good player. I think Haniger's got a chance to be good. He had a couple rookies have really good years. Felix has kind of given his whole career to Seattle. And it's sad for me to see Felix. He's really, poured his heart out as far as playing for the Mariners. And for 3 or 4 years, was one of the best pitchers in the game. He's getting a little older now and isn't quite what he was, but I'd like to see, if anything, do it for him.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, you played ball in Canada, in Calgary, if I'm not mistaken. How was Canadian baseball?
It was definitely different. I actually did an interview recently with somebody in Calgary. And I remember I was on the C train. That got me everywhere. And, put yourself in my position. I'm 19, 20 years old. I'm driving around, I'm in a different country. Remember, it was really clean. And I remember I couldn't order an iced tea because they'd always have Long Island iced tea mix.
Oh, gee.
And half the time, if I was at Subway and I wanted a Coke, there was no ice. And I said, could I get some ice? And they said, no, the Coke's cold. I said, I don't care if it's cold. I want ice in it. So that's what I remember about Canada.
Because Calgary, I mean, that's far up in Alberta. I think that's farther up than Edmonton, if I'm not. No, it's south of Edmonton.
But Edmonton's actually close.
Yeah.
We would bust to Edmonton. They were in the league at the time. It was the three teams that were in the PCL was Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver.
The whole British Columbia, the whole Western Rocky kind of thing, yeah. I mean, you're going from Southern California all the way to a frozen tundra of a place.
And I'll tell you this: at that time in my life, I had I was like a horse. I had blinders on. I could care less where I was. Just put me on a baseball field and let me go. That's all I cared about. And I had a lot to learn. I definitely had a lot to learn. I mean, I look back at those years and I crack up. My mom or my dad will tell me things I said, and I said, "Yeah, that sounds like something I'd say." And they're like, "No, you really said it." and I laughed because I was so naive. But at the time, it was like, just let's play baseball every day. Let's play a doubleheader every day, and I want to get to the big leagues. And like I said, I had blinders on. Let's just go.
Well, again, you grew up in pretty much the Philadelphia Phillies, clubhouse. I mean, Pete Rose Jr. You were hanging with, and a few others. And that has to have said something. Because
that's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing with me over the years. It's I look back now, being 48 years old, and I just think, wow, how special was my childhood? Getting to grow up in Philly clubhouses, and then Dad went on to the Angels. And I just, at the time, was like, no, this is what my dad does for a living. It's not a big deal. I just go to work with him. But now looking back, awesome. I mean, how cool was it? And everybody, who was your favorite player? I never had a favorite player. I could care less. I liked hanging out with everybody. And I try to hang out with the guy that I was bugging the least. Because back in those days, I would be out at the vet shagging and doing my thing and probably getting in everybody's way. But, wow, what special times those were.
Well, I mean, look, Mark McGraw, Ryan Luzinski, your brother Aaron tagged along. And was he 4 years younger than you, Aaron? He was born in 73.
4 years, yeah. I think Ryan and Aaron are the same age, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then, you have, but still, then you go to California, so now you're back home. But look at the 82. What was this, in 1982 that he was traded to the
1982, and believe me, I was pissed. Because, when you're a Jersey guy, when you're a Jersey guy, you're a Jersey guy. And, all my buddies are like, oh, you're going to move to California, surf's up, this and that. And now I'm in 8th grade. I'm 13 years old, and I'm going, yeah, I'm not going out there. I'm not. And my dad got traded to the Angels. And the first year, he decided that he was going to keep the family in Jersey, and we were going to commute and just come out for the summer. And then after about a year, he said, you know what, you guys are just moving out here. So we made the full move, and I remember how pissed I was. Like, I'm not going to California. I can't stand California. And about 6 months into it, I was like, this is pretty cool. Girls are cute. And I've been a Southern Cal guy ever since.
Weren't you born in California? You were born in El Cajon, California.
Well, everybody says, oh, you're from El Cajon, California. No, I was like in El Cajon for a minute.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I was actually born there. But then when I was born, my dad was at Stanford. He was in college. So I was there, and then we went back east, and I got to spend a lot of time with my grandpa. But Jersey, we already covered. Dad's first year with the Phillies was 72. I was born in 69. So from the age of 3 till 13, I was a Jersey kid. I was getting hoagies at Wawa.
Well, I come from New York, so I'm right over the water. Now I spend my time in Boston, where I moved here 24 years ago to go to law school, and then I went to tax school and got my master's in tax and accounting. Speaking of which, there's a lot of negativity. You turn on the TV, you want to throw up. That whole thing in Vegas just sickened me. The guy was an accountant. Oh my God, the guy was an accountant.
I'll tell you what. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and obviously I have a ton of compassion for what those people. I couldn't imagine being there, let alone having a loved one there. But I'm thinking, if you're a psychopath, it was like the perfect venue. I mean, who shoots out a window on the 32nd floor? Obviously, it was a big suite because the windows were far apart, and just kamikaze everything. And it's just, it's sickening. From what I'm hearing, it's like the biggest massacre in the history of the United States.
It is.
Just to watch it, at a certain point, you got to turn it off because it makes you feel so bad. It's like, I couldn't imagine, I think about all these people that were there, and I think of, if I had somebody there or a loved one there, it's just, who could do something like that? I mean, how bad does life have to be for you to do something like that? And it's unbelievable.
Things like this, and it makes me wonder. I mean, even ballparks, they have the metal detectors and stuff. But with modern technology, you don't even need that. You could build your own.
I'll tell you what, Ian, it spooks me to death because I know anybody can rent a private plane. As long as you got enough money, you can just write the check, and there's no security getting on a private plane. So what's going to keep somebody from getting a private plane and just doing what they did on 9/11 and flying into an arena? It scares me.
I look at that and I'm like, and all my lawyer friends are like, well, Ian, how would you defend the guy if he would have survived? I said, well, he's a crackpot. He probably wouldn't go to jail. He would probably go to the psycho ward because this is.
Well, think about that venue. I mean, he's on the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay. Those windows, obviously, I'm sure you've been in those hotels in Las Vegas. Those windows don't open. So who would expect somebody's going to kick through a window or however you got through it and start shooting people? But it was obviously well calculated. I've got a couple friends that are in the armed forces, and it sounds to me that he had some training in the armed forces. Now, I'm watching all the news, and they say he didn't. They said it was too calculated. He knew what he was doing too much, to just. And the thing is, it's like when you start hearing those sounds of that weapon, it's like, where do you look? How do you know where it's coming from? It's at night and, it's dark and you just don't know. So law enforcement couldn't take him out right away because they don't know where it's coming from. It was just horrific. Absolutely horrific. Like I said, I got to turn the TV off. It just makes me so sad at a certain point. It's like, enough.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas is growing, and I think, aren't the Raiders moving there next year? I mean, they already got the Golden Knights in hockey, and I think the Raiders, didn't they sign an agreement to move to Vegas?
I don't know. I've been watching that show Ballers. Yeah,
I mean,
they say they're moving there on Ballers, so I don't know if that's.
I think
that's
because baseball would have to have an indoor thing, something like what the Diamondbacks have. And I know you went to Arizona for a while too, but Vegas is growing.
Yeah, in Vegas it would be too hot to play outside in the summer, so they'd have to have an indoor facility.
How the heck did you do it in Arlington in the summer when you had to visit Texas? That must have been brutal.
I'll tell you what, once again, it's, when you're in the game, when you're in the moment. Now, as an older guy, it's like I look back and go, I was just back in your neck of the woods. You'd have probably been wearing shorts.
I am wearing shorts.
Right. And I needed blankets and I needed a hoodie and, I'm just not built for that anymore. My blood is thinned so much. But I see any venue I go to now. I mean, extreme. Just living in Southern California, if I go anywhere, it's like I'm either way too hot or way too cold. So
it's amazing how far the time just changes you. But let me ask you this. Now that you're coaching, your twins and stuff like that, what do you think about, trying to, maybe get into like minor league coaching and stuff like that? I think you were coaching before, but I don't have the data.
I coach in the minor league system. I was one of those positions, assistant to the general manager for the A's in 2014 and 15. And I actually really enjoyed my time there. I really enjoyed talking to these young guys, A-ball guys, and just, my thing was just kind of teaching them, not necessarily mechanics or, defensively, we would talk about how to defend. But for me, my favorite part about the gig was teaching these kids how to think like big leaguers. Now, I was sitting there, I'm an A-ball, I'm with the A-ball team, and I'm going, I don't know how many guys are going to be big leaguers here. And actually, to my surprise, like 7 guys were in the big leagues for the A's this year that I had in A-ball. But I just thought, how can I teach them how to behave like a big leaguer, how to think like a big leaguer? Because that was my thing. It's not necessarily the mechanics or how you do this or how you do that, how you play defense, how you hit. It's like, no, how do you think how to hit? How do you prepare to hit? And that's my passion, is teaching people, no, it's not about the physical mechanics. Everyone wants to do that. Oh, what's your best teacher? Well, growing up, nobody taught me anything. It was trial and error. And it was just me, repetitions and stage and ground balls. And I taught myself how to do it. But nobody taught me how to think the game.
Your dad never showed you how to hit?
Dad didn't teach me one thing. Physical. Not one thing. Say what? What he did teach me, and probably the most important thing, he taught me how to walk and talk and be a professional. That's what he taught me.
Well, let me ask you this. What do? Like, you can teach hitting just like Ted Williams. Ted Williams, I don't know if you ever read his book, The Science of Hitting. We talked about Ted Williams earlier in the show with your grandfather and stuff. He was the greatest hitter, I think. Not all-around baseball player. He'll admit, I wasn't the greatest all-around baseball player.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a story, and this will change your view on this. Ted Williams must have been unbelievable. Last guy to hit 400. I wasn't around to see him play one game. Grandpa played with him at the very end of his career. And actually, Grandpa went to high school, same high school, down in San Diego. And he used to tell me Ted Williams is the greatest hitter ever. He's the greatest. And like I told you about my grandpa, he was the proudest man I've ever known about his generation. We'd sit there at the dinner table and we'd be talking about it. The players are just better than that. I said, okay. And at the time, it was, Kobe Bryant, Shaq. And I said, what if Shaq was playing against, guys in the 1950s? Well, he would dominate. I said, okay. What if Dan Marino was playing against the guys in the 1950s? Oh, he's way better. I said, okay. What about Barry Bonds now against Ted Williams? Oh, not even close. Ted's way better. And I said, Griff, how does that logic work out? It doesn't work out. But the story I'm about to tell you is when Gramps was diagnosed, and I got a phone call in 2004, and they said, your grandpa's sick. He got rushed to the hospital. And that was crushing to me. And I got on a plane right after, I think we had a day game, and I flew out, and I saw him. And he was always a real thin man, very vain guy, and always combing his hair, and always dressed to the nines. And he couldn't talk. And he had a chalkboard that he could write notes to whoever was in the room. And I said, I'd be writing notes back and forth to him, and he said, let me tell you this. And he writes on the chalkboard, he said, this Jake Peavy guy has a chance to be pretty good. And obviously you remember Jake Peavy, correct?
Yeah, I do. I remember him.
He said, this Jake Peavy guy's got a chance to be pretty good. Because at the time, Gramps was, kind of an honorable scout, but he scouted the last 40 years of his life. And he said, and yes, Barry Bonds is a better hitter than Ted Williams. He wrote that on the chalkboard to me. And I just had tears in my eyes, and I just thought, well, Gramps is definitely going to die now. There's no way he's coming out of this to have to deal with this debate. And that's kind of when I knew it was over. It's like he knew he was going to pass away, and he finally admitted to me, he goes, Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter in the history of this, and no one's even close. And for Gramps to say that says enough about everything.
And it brings up another debate because I am so against this whole thing with steroids and all this other stuff that you still got to hit the ball. And at the time, being a lawyer, there are 5,000 steroids out there. None of these things were banned at the but in your father's time, they used greenies. I don't know if your father used it, but that was being passed around in the early 70s. Before that, it was this red juice.
Let me tell you this. Steroids were around in the 70s. Just nobody will talk about it because they don't want to tarnish their numbers. They don't want to think anything of it. Like, oh, yeah, I never got caught, so I'll just say if I took them, I'd have hit 800 homers, which is a bunch of malarkey. Bottom line is they were around then. When you get on that issue, to me, the Hall of Fame is a joke. You've got, maybe they let one in a year. There's 50 people that should be in the Hall of Fame, my opinion. I have no respect for the whole Hall of Fame thing. It's a bunch of people having their opinions playing God, or, oh, he took him, he didn't take him, so I'm going to vote for him. I'm not going to vote for him. And I completely disagree with the whole premise. To me, it was the era, okay, and if you want to call it the steroid era, that's fine. But just either everybody was taking them or nobody was taking them. And you vote on the people that dominated the generation. And that's how you vote. But we don't do that. It's certain guys. If you looked the part, if you went to the gym, oh, you definitely had to be taking them, which is a bunch of crap. Or certain guys were taking them but didn't look the part, so, oh, we'll vote for them. So I have zero respect for the Hall of Fame votes. I think a lot more guys should be in, and a lot of guys that are in shouldn't be in. But once you get in, all these guys get pompous and, oh, we're Hall of Famers. It's a bad subject, really, because I just disagree with the premise so much. It's like, no, the bottom line, I'll give you a perfect example. For me, if I had to vote for myself, I was a fringe guy. I hit 250 homers. I had over 1,000 RBIs, which has got to be top 10 all time for my position. But if I clearly had to take a vote, I'd say, you know what? I wasn't quite good enough to be in that class. I'm close, but I'm not. Yeah, that's just me, being honest. But I look at a guy like Carlos Delgado. This man hit 450 home runs. He was eliminated the first year. He had less than 2% of the votes. That just tells me people don't take it that serious. It's like the Gold Gloves in the 90s. You go around the coaches and, oh, who should win it? Oh, who won it last year? Oh, all right, they get it this year. So I think people should really take a look at stuff like that. Roberto Alomar not getting in first ballot, that's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Jeff Kent right now, look at his numbers. He's got 15% of the vote. Look at Jeff Kent's numbers as a second baseman. He's the all-time career leader in homers, second in RBIs to Roger Hornsby, and he's got 15% of the vote. That tells me And people either don't like Jeff Kent or they don't take it serious because it's a bunch of crap, is what it is.
Look at Rafael Palmeiro.
They don't know what they're doing.
I mean, Rafael Palmeiro. I mean,
you kidding me? He's got 600 home runs. He's got 3,000 hits. Do people even realize how big that is? That's ridiculous. You know, you talk about Reggie Jackson, okay. Hit 500 homers, 250 career hitter, 260, whatever he was. Palmeiro was a 300 hitter with 3,000 hits. They don't even consider him. Because, to their credit, he did lie. He wiggled his finger at Congress. But I just have no respect for the whole voting system. I think people have biases. They try to play God, and they say, oh, he took him, but he didn't take him. He took him, he didn't. These guys have no clue who took him, who didn't take him. So I think you have to judge the era on the era. Either everybody took him or nobody took him. And the steroid era, that's why he hit the homers. Well, what about the pitcher he was hitting off? So if he was taking him and the hitter was taking him, is that not an even playing field? Does that make sense? It's absurd. It's absurd. And people are uneducated and they're naive to what the actual steroids are, whatever they are.
And you know, you bring up an interesting point because I always say these guys should be in because they're no different than, say, Don Sutton or Gaylord Perry, who doctored the balls, you know, all that stuff. But they're no different than Babe Ruth, who thumbed his nose at prohibition. He broke the law. He drank when you couldn't drink.
Well, and it's just like the guys in the 70s and 80s that say, oh, yeah, if I would have taken him, I would have got 8,000 hits. I would have done that. Steroids were around that. And people don't want to acknowledge that because there's no test to confirm it. We've only tested recently. Like the other sports, pro basketball, pro football. Oh, they're on the up and up. Well, that's because they've had programs in place for a long time. And that's why baseball bears the brunt of everything because we're the last major sport to institutionalize a testing program. That's why we get the brunt. And I think it's still America's pastime, which makes me feel good because baseball's still baseball. And people think if you hit home runs, you take steroids. And it's so far from the truth. And it's such a naive approach to it and an uneducated approach that drives me crazy. And I sit there and I listen to people and I just think, how can I deal with this person that has no concept of anything and just spewing nonsense? It insults my intelligence, if that makes sense.
Let me ask you this. How can we get baseball back more into the mainstream? You know, people are all into the football and the basketballs and all this stuff. And, you know, you hear the talk that baseball has fallen off as America's pastime. You grew up in a baseball household. I grew up in a baseball household. You know, my kids are more interested in football than they are baseball, although now they're watching the playoffs and all this stuff they're starting to get. But how can we institute? I mean, Little League has fallen by 50% in the last 10 years. You know, it's basically we're importing players from, like, you know, Dominican Republic and these. How can we get baseball back into American culture?
Well, I think the positive things about it, everything you just mentioned, is the fact that you have a lot of players coming from a lot of different places. So I think that, you know, the Japanese reach and the Korean reach and, you know, every other country that's now really taking on baseball. I think the more countries that have baseball as a main sport, you're going to get the best players in the world, not just in the United States, which I think is awesome. That being said, I think the inner cities are going to basketball and football. I think that's the main thing. You know, you have a lot of Dominicans, a lot of Venezuelan people, a lot of Japanese players. But as far as the African Americans, they're playing basketball and football. And I think baseball needs to do a better job of getting the African Americans into the game. And that's what I think we could do better as a culture. But it is what it is. And we've just got to continue to move forward. Like I said, I think after watching the playoffs last year and how great of a show it was through the World Series, I think baseball kind of, took over again as just a main force. And I think they just need to continue to promote the game in the right way and just continue to bring people in from wherever they're born and make it the greatest game in the world again.
Let me ask you this, if I'm going to give you a final question. Tonight we got the Yankees and Twins. Tomorrow I think we got the Rockies and Diamondbacks. What do you think about this one playoff game for the wild card?
What I think about it is resorting back to Felix. I think at first, when I saw Bud take over, I was disappointed. I was a big critic, admittedly. I've got to admit, after 20, 25 years, he did a really good job. There's a ton of parity in the game now. I think what he did with the wild card, he kept several more cities in the hunt for a long time. So he kept the expectations up, cities involved, excited, down to the last. I think about when my dad played, two teams from each league. So the rest of the teams in each league, they were out of the race. Probably there were 10,000 people going to each league. Now it gives everybody a chance. And at first, I'm kind of a purist and old school, so I always think that way. But like a lot of things in life, I've kind of changed my view on that. I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for the fan. And I think the fan is the most important. Because if you don't have the fans, you don't have anything. And I just see the fan, you keep him engaged at a long time. If you're growing up in, not this particular year, but if you're growing up in Philly and, it's a sports fanatic's haven, living in Philly or New York. And it's like if your team is kind of on the cusp and you're 500, you still got a chance. So those fans are talking about it every day. And I think that's nothing but a good thing for the game.
Brett, I want to end the show with your book of Home Game. I know it's still out. You got your own website regarding it. I love the website. I go there occasionally. I read your stuff. Where else can we find Home Game? And
I think it's BretBooneBook.com, but you can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere. But BretBoone.com or BretBooneBook.com is the website that kind of kicks you to everything. So you can get it anywhere there. I think
Walmart, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, a few other places. Sam, I really enjoyed it this time. And the good thing is, I just do it off the cuff. There's no choreography here.
Well, obviously I do it off the cuff.
Yeah, I do it off the cuff. It makes it real. And something? It's always an honor to have you on the show. We'll get you back again probably around November, December if you have some time. Hold the line. This is how I end the show. And then I'll talk to you for an extra minute. Folks, I had a great time with Bret Boone today. Go out, get his book. He's such a wealth of knowledge regarding baseball. Go watch the playoffs. We got the Yankees Twins on tonight. We got the Rockies and Diamondbacks. It's going to be a great series throughout the whole playoffs. I'm all excited that it's October. As always, I'm your host, Ian Kahanowitz. Thank you, Bret Boone, for being on the show today. And in the immortal words of Edward R. Murrow, good night, folks. Good luck. We'll see you next time.